Hello and welcome to this final session looking at, for the first time at any rate, Every Man in His Humour by Ben Jonson. We are going into Act 5 today. All of the threads have been tangled together and they're all going to get pulled upon and things are going to happen. With all the various plot lines that have been played around with over the last 3 sessions. I say this is the final session of our first look. Of course, there is another version of the text to come much further down the line as Ben Jonson does tinker with it and change its location at a later date. We're going from the earlier version of the text, though there's a whole series of other wibbly-wobbly overlapping textual issues that we'll worry about at a later date. But by and large, I say, we're going from Act 5, and we're going to get to the end. We've got a relatively small room for quite a lot of parts, so we may be dancing around a bit. I may be reading random characters. Keep up, focus, people. So, reading today, we have in the room, reading Biancha and Musco is...
Hello, I'm Dan. I'm hailing from the west coast of the United States.
Reading Clement, and maybe some other people as well, is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm hailing from Romford in Essex, and I'm an author.
Reading Cobb and Matheo today is...
Alan Scott, still confused in Suffolk.
Reading Thorello and Peto today is...
Hello, Helen Good, and I'm a historian, and I'm in Hull, and it isn't hailing.
Reading Tib and Bobadilla is...
Rachael, actor on the East Coast. Bobadilla.
Reading Giuliano and Lorenzo Jr. is...
Oh, yes, my mic is on. Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm also on the West Coast, north of Dan. It's not hailing here. It is dark, but it's not hailing.
And reading Piso, Stephano, and Prospero is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm trapped somewhere in the 9th century. Help me!
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. Hopefully there'll be at least one more reader popping in a little later on. We'll introduce you as and when and if that happens. Otherwise, I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will be filling in for any gaps as we go. Without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 5, Scene 1. I'm going to ask Elizabeth to step in and read Lorenzo Senior for this scene. That may change later on. And we'll get a sense of where we're at. Everybody is, in theory, heading towards Cobb's house, and Tib is inside the house and with orders to repel all boarders. So enter to the scene Lorenzo Senior.
Oh, here it is. I'm glad I found it now. Ho! Who is within here?
And enter Tib.
I am within, sir. What's your pleasure?
To know who is within besides yourself.
Why, sir, you are no constable, I hope.
Oh, fear you the constable? Then I doubt not. You have some guests within deserve that fear. I'll fetch him straight.
Oh, God's name, sir.
Go to. Tell me, is not the young Lorenzo here?
Young Lorenzo? I saw none such, sir, of mine honesty.
Go to. Your honesty flies too lightly from you. There's no way but fetch the constable.
The constable? The man is mad, I think.
And clasps to the door. Enter Piso and Bianca.
Oh, who keeps house here?
Oh, this is the female coaxmate of my son. Now shall I meet him straight.
Knock, Piso, pray thee.
Oh, good wife?
And re-enter Tib.
Why, what's the matter with you?
Why, woman, grieves it you to open your door? Be like you to get something to keep it shut.
What mean these questions, pray ye?
Strange you make it. Is not Thorello my tried husband here?
Her husband?
I hope he needs not be tried here.
No, dame, he doth it not for need but pleasure.
Neither for need nor pleasure is he here.
This is but a device to balk me withal. Soft, Who's this?
Enter
Oh,
Thorello.
sir. Oh, sir, have I forestalled your honest market? Found your close walks? You stand amazed now, do you? In faith, I am glad I have smoked you yet at last. What's your jewel, trow? In, come, let's see her. Fetch forth your housewife, dame. If she be fairer in any honest judgment than myself, I'll be content with it. But she has changed. She feeds you fat. She soothes your appetite. And you are well. Your wife, an honest woman, is meat twice salt to you, sir. Oh, you treacher.
She cannot counterfeit this palpably.
Out on thee! More than strumpet's impudency. Steal'st thou thus to thy haunts? And have I taken thy board and thee and thy companion, this hoary-headed lecher, this old goat, close at your villainy? And wouldst thou excuse it with a stale harlot's jest, accusing me? Oh, old incontinent, dost thou not shame, when all thy powers in chastity are spent, to have a mind so hot, and to entice and feed the enticements of a lustful woman?
Out, I defy thee, high dissembling wretch.
Defy me, strumpet? Ask thy pander here, can he deny it, or that wicked elder?
Why, hear you, signor.
Tut, tut, never speak. Thy guilty conscience will discover thee.
What lunacy is this that haunts this man?
And enter Giuliano.
Oh, sister, did you see my cloak?
Not I see none.
God's life, I have lost it then. Saw you Hesperida?
Hesperida? Is she not at home?
No, she's gone abroad and no one can tell me of it at home.
And exit Giuliano.
Oh, heaven, abroad, what light a harlot too! Why, hark you, hath she not a brother's house to keep, to look unto, but she must fling abroad? My wife hath spoiled her, and takes right after her, she does. Well, you goody board,
And enter Cobb.
to make your husband such a hoddy-doddy, and you, young April squire, an old cuckold maker, I'll have you every one before the doctor. Nay, you shall answer it. I charge you go.
Marry, with all my heart, I'll go willingly. How have I wronged myself in coming here?
Go with thee. I'll go with thee to thy shame. I warn thee.
Why, what's the matter? What's here to do?
What? Cobb, art thou here? Oh, I am abused, and in thy house was never man so wronged.
Slid in my house? Who wronged you in my house?
Marry, young lust in old, and old in young here. Thy wife's their board. Here have I taken them.
Do you hear? Did I not charge you keep your doors shut here? And do you let them lie open for all comers? Do you scratch?
And Cobb beats his wife.
Friend, have patience. If she have done wrong in this, let her answer it before the magistrate.
Aye, come, you shall go afore the doctor.
Nay, I will go. I'll see, and you may be allowed to beat your poor wife thus at every cuckoldly knave's pleasure. The devil and the pox take you all from me. Why do you not go now?
A bitter queen. Come, we'll have you tamed.
And they exit, and we'll call that the close of a scene. Okay, there's an awful lot going on here. I was making notes as I went along to just sort of go through the confusions that are going on in this scene. So we've got Lorenzo Sr., who's looking for his son, Lorenzo Jr., at the house of Cobb. We then have Bianca coming in asking where her husband is, and they, of course, don't know anything about that either. Bianca comes in asking where her husband, having asked where the husband is, the husband then enters, and she says, well, where's the person you're having an affair with at this house? And he says, well, you're just as bad. You're coming here for who's the person you're having an affair with. And then Giuliano comes in going, where's my cloak? And then he goes off. And then during that exchange, Thorello's going, oh my God, is Prospero as bad as everybody else? Oh my goodness, this whole place is a den of iniquity. And then Cobb comes in and gets very confused by what everybody else is saying, and then thinks that his own wife is aboard and is running a disorderly house. And so he enacts an unfortunate spousal abuse. And then everybody's sort of talking about let's drag everybody off to the magistrate, and all of which complications has been set up very carefully over the last 3 hours. Helen.
Yes, the other point, the point that I rather took was that Thorello thinks that Lorenzo Senior is the one who's having the affair with his wife. So he attacks him in the most appalling terms. He's an awful lot of what Thorello is saying is, I think, directed to Lorenzo Senior.
So it's there's just it all happens incredibly quickly, but it has all been very carefully set up so that it should. I think Lynn made this point earlier in the week. You know, this clockwork mechanism has been very, very carefully put together. Has a real energy to it. Eric.
Well, yesterday I mentioned the Battle of Mumblecrust. It's a bit like that for some reason. It's sort of the whole setup is very reminiscent of Ralph Royster Doyster, where you've got this whole thing of like people sort of basically chaos. And it's kind of, it reminded me of that sort of, especially with the whole like the person who created this chaos is actually not here. Where, well, having said that, in Ralph Royster Doyster, you know, Mary Greek is there sort of goading them on. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, in Ralph Royster Doyster, it's very much set up of two opposing armies that sort of clash, whereas here it's more like the every second somebody else comes in with a different confusion and gets turned around by something else somebody else is saying, and it's all perfectly reasonable from their point of view. But they're all wrong. And we know they're wrong, so it's funny. Other thoughts?
I was a little... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I was a little taken aback by Cobb beating his wife. It seemed to come out of nowhere. But I was wondering if in the scenes that we did yesterday, did Cobb show any signs of being like that?
Certainly the jealousy idea was set up.
Okay.
And in a sense that question of what this moment is, the idea of people beating each other quite randomly happens quite a lot in this play. It's the first time where it's been across the gender line. So it comes across as something perhaps more starkly to us than it was intended. Alan, I think, and then Helen.
Yeah, I was just going to say it was set up yesterday because Cobb had given firm instructions to Tib, keep the door shut, don't let anyone in. You know, and she's disobeyed that instruction, and that was the consequence.
Well, she hasn't actually disobeyed it.
Hasn't.
He just it just appears to him.
Has.
Yeah. Helen.
Yes, but the point of Cobb telling her to keep the door shut was actually Bobadilla. Because Bobadilla is the one that she's been lending money to and doing his laundry without charging him, and generally seeming to favor him. But of course he wasn't part of this original confusion. No doubt he'll turn up soon.
Indeed. It's almost like you knew what's going to happen next. Any other thoughts before we go into what I'll call scene 2? Eric?
It's almost like you've got this thing of, because they've orchestrated all this action sort of to happen, at Cobb's house. And there's a part of me going, all the fun stuff is actually happening off stage, but this has been set up to be fun because of the context, not because of the because of the situation, not because of what's actually happening. If that makes sense, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of I express that kind of weirdly, but yeah.
Yeah, we got you. Okay, let's gather a little more data as to what's going on. We're reintroducing ourselves to Musco. We're going to have in a moment Bobadilla and Matheo entering. So Bobadilla is the soldiery type, and Matheo is the one who really, really wants to be a soldiery type. A bit of fanning going on there. Whereas I don't know which disguise Musco is in at the moment. Musco has been doing a lot of disguising, so I don't know which. Is he still disguised? He said he was changing his disguise, I think, last time, so I don't know what disguise he's in at the moment. Perhaps he will tell us in the form of a monologue. Enter Musco alone.
Well, of all my disguises yet, now am I most like myself. Being in this varlet suit, a man of my present profession never counterfeits till he lay hold upon a debtor, and says he rests him, for then he brings himself to all manners of unrest. A kind of little kings we are, bearing the diminutive of a mace, made like a young artichoke that always carries pepper and salt in itself. Well, I know not what danger I undergo by this exploit. Pray God, I come well off.
Enter Bobadilla and Matheo.
See, I think yonder is the varlet.
Let's go in quest of him.
God save you, friend. Are you not here by the appointment of Dr. Clement's man?
Yes, and please you, sir, he told me 2 gentlemen had willed him to procure an arrest upon one Signor Giuliano by a warrant from his master, which I have about me.
It is honestly done of you both. Let's see where he comes. You must arrest. Upon him, for God's sake, before he be aware.
Bear back, Matheo.
And enter Stephano, who we should just note for the newcomers in the room, is currently wearing the cloak of Giuliano that was lost earlier and is therefore being mistaken for him at this particular instance. He is entirely innocent of what he is being accused of.
Did he steal the cloak?
He did sort of steal the cloak, yeah.
Okay.
It was finders keepers, which in law is meaningless. Anyway, enter Stephano.
Signor Giuliano, I arrest you, sir, in the Duke's name.
Signor Giuliano? Am I Signor Giuliano? I'm one Signor Stephano, I tell you, and you do not well by God's lid to arrest me. I tell you truly, I am not in your master's book. You should well know. I and a plague of God on you for making me afraid thus.
Why? How are you deceived, gentlemen?
Such a cloak, and that deceived us. But see, here comes, officer, this is he.
Enter Giuliano.
Why, how now, Signor Gull? Are you turned filcher of late? Come, deliver my cloak.
Your cloak, sir. I bought it even now in the market.
Signor Giuliano, I must arrest you, sir.
Arrest me? At whose suit?
At these 2 gentlemen's.
I obey thee, varlet, but for these villains...
Keep the peace, I charge you, sir, in the Duke's name, sir.
What's the matter, varlet?
You must go before Master Dr. Clement, sir, to answer what these gentlemen would object against you. Hark you, sir, I will use you kindly.
We'll be even with you, sir. Come, Signor Bobadilla. We'll go before and prepare the doctor. Varlet, look to him.
Exeunt Bobadilla and Matheo. Oh, no, hang on, they can't do. After this line, I think.
The varlet is a tall man, by Jesu.
Away, you rascals! Signor, I shall have my cloak.
Your cloak? I say once again, I bought it and I'll keep it.
You will keep it?
Aye, that I will.
Varlet, stay. Here's a fee. Arrest him.
Signor Stephano, I arrest you.
Arrest me? Take your cloak, I'll none of it.
Nay, that shall not serve your turn. Varlet, bring him away. I'll go with thee now to the doctor's and carry him along.
Why, is not here your cloak? What would you have?
I care not for that.
I pray you, sir.
Never talk of it. I will have him answer it.
Well, sir, then I'll leave you. I'll take this gentleman's word for his appearance as I have done yours.
Tut. I'll have no words taken. Bring him along to answer it.
Good sir, I pity the gentleman's case. Here's your money again.
God's bread. Tell me not of my money. Bring him away, I say.
I warrant you, he will go with you of himself.
Yet more ado?
I've made a fair mash of it.
Must I go?
And they exit. That's an interesting scene. Initially I thought, oh, they've thrown away the cloak thing because immediately Giuliano entered, and then it becomes a sort of, no, you arrest him, no, you arrest him, little game. No, I don't want to be arrested. No, here, have the cloak back. Sort of back and forth. I don't know if that quite got the maximum payload out of that situation. Lynn?
Yeah, I suspect the whole cloak thing is a mechanism to just get everybody in front of Dr. Clement, to have a reason to drag Stephano into the mix so that everybody's there. That's my guess.
Yeah, but it felt as a comic situation. It felt like that could be worked longer. I mean, I'm not saying that we need more material from this play, but it felt like there was more that could be got there out of that setup, because it's been set up for a while now, and it's like we were waiting for the cloak business to appear. And it sort of it was very brief, but some good stuff. I did, that turning it around and going, no, actually, I don't want it. I didn't buy it. It's yours. Have it back. Don't arrest me. Yeah, but yeah, Musco and his new guys as serving this writ or whatever. Eric.
I like how Stephano was like, what more do you want from me? I gave your cloak back. Now what? Like, I mean, I didn't steal it. I found it in the, it's like I found it. Finders keepers is law. Therefore, you're the one stealing from me. You could think like that might be an addition. He would have thought up, but he didn't. It's just interesting how he's like sort of dragged along for this.
Yeah, and you're right. Lynn was just making that sort of the Doylist perspective. That's these things are happening so that everyone's on stage at the same time at the end. Yeah. So yeah, it's a similar sort of repeat of essentially the kind of setup that we had in the previous scene, where a knock-on series of effects as people change their position. Because of what the previous person does, and when somebody else enters the scene, it slightly changes the situation again. So the Musco coming on, and they talk about the writ, and they find the person who they should deliver the writ to, and then the other person comes along, and that changes the situation again. So it's a sort of domino effect of action in scenes. It's quite interesting. So it's similar energy from the previous scene. Any other thoughts before we get to the climactic, epic conclusion, which we will stop and start during, if only because we've got to stop and start because there's going to be a lot of people reading the same thing. So yes, I'm just going to quickly throw some additional parts around to make sure that it all fits together. So, Alan, could I ask you to read Servant coming up? It's a relatively brief one popping in. And for the moment, I'll read Lorenzo Senior just to make sure that we don't have everybody reading Lorenzo Senior. Elizabeth can't read Lorenzo Senior because Elizabeth is now Clement. And Dr. Clement's going to sort it all out, I'm sure. The doctor is open for business. Eric, before we go into...
There's this scene with the Giuliano, Musco, and Stephano. There's this acting game. I think it's an acting game. I don't know, like an improvisation game where they give you a secret and you're not supposed to reveal it, but the other person has to like sort of... You're supposed to guess and force the other person's secret, and sort of through guessing, sort of through interacting with them in a situation. And it kind of reminded me of, well, Giuliano's secret is basically that he's pissed off at everyone, which is not really a secret. He just beats everybody up. but it's just interesting sort of to think of it in that context, like that it might have evolved out of, I don't know, that kind of game maybe, or not.
Yeah, I think there's definitely one of the starting points for producing this kind of play is actually start with the characters, not starting with the plot. Is that you're doing those kind of actor games because the actors really need to be absolutely on it in terms of who they are and what they're doing. And gameplay is a really, really good tool for this kind of thing. So yeah, the idea that, you know, if we think about humours as you know, the kind of secret motivations, the little things that they've got underneath, you know, you don't tell the other actors what their humour is. You've got to guess. That might be a really nice route in, actually. Elizabeth.
Yeah, just speaking to what you and Eric were just saying, wasn't it commonly held belief in the early modern period that like an imbalance in the humours would manifest itself emotionally?
Absolutely.
So I just thought that would kind of add to, you know, the sense that one of the characters is jealous because his humours are out of whack.
Absolutely, and that's one of those things that we're going to be, as we do more Humours plays, we will start diving more into the underlying reasons for the logic of these plays, because it comes exactly from that. It's coming from those medical ideas that are so much fun. Yeah, and it sort of makes an interesting nonsense of psychology. You know, why are you like this? Because there's an imbalance somewhere in my humours. That's the reason why I'm doing all of these things. And you don't need a motivation in the same way, perhaps. But anyway, we will get deeper into that further down the line. Let's begin what we'll call Act 5, Scene 3, with the entrance of Dr. Clement. We also have Thorello, jealous. Lorenzo Sr., very confused about what's going on with his son. Biancha, Piso, Tib, a servant or two of the doctor's as well.
Nay, but stay. Give me leave, my chair, Sirrah. You, Signor Lorenzo, say you went thither to meet your son.
Aye, sir.
But who directed you thither?
That did my man, sir.
Where is he?
Nay, I know not now. I left him with your clerk, and appointed him to stay here for me.
About what time was this?
Marry between 1 and 2, as I take it.
So, what time came my man with the message to you, Signor Thorello?
After 2, sir.
Very good. But, lady, how that you were at Cobb's, huh?
And please you, sir, I'll tell you. My brother Prospero told me that Cobb's house was a suspected place.
So it appears, methinks. But on?
And that my husband used thither daily.
No matter. So he used himself well.
True, sir, but you know what grows by such haunts oftentimes.
Aye, rank fruits of a jealous brain, lady. But did you find your husband there in that case, as you suspected?
I found her there, sir.
Did you so? That alters the case. Who gave you knowledge of your wife's being there?
Well, marry, that did my brother, Prospero.
How? Prospero first tell her, then tell you after. Where is Prospero?
Well, gone with my sister, sir. I know not whither.
Why, this is a mere trick, a device. You are gulled in this most grossly. Alas, poor wench, wert thou beaten for this? How now, Sirrah? What's the matter?
Enter one of the doctor's men.
There's a gentleman in the court without desires to speak with your worship.
A gentleman? What's he?
A soldier, sir, he saith.
A soldier? Fetch me my armour, my sword, quickly. A soldier speak with me? Why, when? Knaves! Come on. Hold my cap there. So, give me my gorget, my sword. Stand by. I will end your matters anon. Let the soldier enter now, sir. What have you to say to me?
Saying, enter Bobadilla and Matheo.
By your worship's favour.
Nay, keep out, sir. I know not your pretence. You send me word, sir, you are a soldier. Why, sir, you shall be answered here. Here be them have been amongst soldiers. Sir, your pleasure?
Faith, sir, so it is. This gentleman and myself have been most violently wronged by one Signor Giuliano, a gallant of the city here, and for my own part, I protest, being a man in no sort given to this filthy humour of quarrelling, he hath assaulted me in the way of my peace, despoiled me of mine honour, disarmed me of my weapons, and beaten me in the open streets, when I not so much as once offered to resist him.
Oh, God's precious! Is this the soldier? Here, take my armour quickly. 'Twill make him swoon, I fear. He is not fit to look on it that will put up a blow.
Enter a servant.
And please your worship, he was bound to the peace.
Why, and he were, sir. His hands were not bound, were they?
There is one of the varlets of the city brought 2 gentlemen here upon arrest, sir.
Bid him come in, set by the picture.
And so enter Musco with Giuliano and Stephano.
Now, sir, what? Signor Giuliano? Is it you that are arrested at Signor Freshwater's suit here?
Faith, Master Doctor, and here's another brought at my suit.
What are you, sir?
A gentleman, sir. Oh, uncle?
Uncle? Who? Lorenzo?
Aye, sir.
God's my witness, my uncle, I am wronged here at Monsterstock. He charges me with stealing of his cloak, and would I might never stir if I did not find it in the street by chance.
Oh, did you find it now? You said you bought it ere while.
And you said I stole it. Nay, now my uncle is here, I care not.
Well, let this breathe a while. You that have cause to complain there, stand forth. Had you a warrant for this arrest?
Aye, an't please your worship.
Nay, do not speak in passion so. Where had you it?
Of your clerk, sir.
That's well. And my clerk can make warrants, and my hand not at them. Where is the warrant? Varlet, have you it?
No, sir, your worship's man bid me do it for these gentlemen, and he would be my discharge.
Why, Signor Giuliano, you are such a novice to be arrested and never see the warrant.
Why, sir, he did not arrest me.
No? How then?
Marry, sir, he came to me and said he must arrest me, and he would use me kindly and so forth.
Oh, God's pity, was it so, sir? He must arrest you? Give me my long sword there. Help me off. So. Come on, Sir Varlet. I must cut off your legs, sirrah. Nay, stand up. I'll use you kindly. I must cut off your legs, I say.
No, oh, good sir, I beseech you. Nay, good Master Doctor, oh, good sir.
I must do it. There is no remedy. I must cut off your legs, sirrah. I must cut off your ears, you rascal. I must do it. I must cut off your nose. I must cut off your head.
Oh, good for God's sake, good Master Doctor.
Well, rise. How dost thou now? Dost thou feel thyself well? Hast thou no harm?
No, I thank God, sir, and your good worship.
Why so? I said I must cut off thy legs, and I must cut off thy arms, and I must cut off thy head. But I did not do it so. You said you must arrest this gentleman, but you did not arrest him. You knave, you slave, you rogue. Do you say you must arrest sirrah? Away with him to the jail. I'll teach you a trick for your must.
Good Master Doctor, I beseech you, be good to me.
Marry your God. Away with him, I say.
Nay, Sblood, before I go to prison, I'll put on my old brazen face and disclaim in my vocation. I'll discover that's flat, and I be committed. It shall be for the committing of more villains than this. Hang me, and I lose the least grain of my fame.
Why, when, knave? By God's marry, I'll clap thee by the heels too.
Hold, I pray you.
What's the matter? Stay there.
Faith, sir, afore I go to this house of bondage, I have a case to unfold to your worship, which, that it may appear more plain unto your worship's view, I do thus first of all on case, and appear in mine own proper nature. servant to this gentleman, and known by the name of Musco.
Musco!
Oh, Uncle, Musco has been with my cousin and I all this day.
Did not I tell you there was some device?
Nay, good master doctor, since I have laid myself thus upon to you, open to your worship, now stand strong for me till the progress of my tale be ended. And then if my wit do not serve your countenance, slight, throw it on a dog, and let me go hang myself.
Body of me, a merry knave, give me a bowl of sack. Signor Lorenzo, I bespeak your patience in particular. Marry, your ears in general, hear, knave. Dr. Clement drinks to thee.
I pledge, master doctor, and were a sea to the bottom.
Fill his bowl for that. Fill his bowl. Now speak freely.
But before we let Musco go into his oration, I think we should just pick up on some of the business that's going on in this scene, because there's some really nice stuff. Yeah, we're talking about just Clement just doing things for his own amusement, I like this bit at the end of just sitting. Let's refreshments, please. If this is gonna be entertaining. It calls for drink. I think there should be popcorn too. I think it's just he's really just having fun with people and playing with words. You know, the must. And just going, well, if it's a must, then I must do all of the things I said I'm going to do. Costume business with the sword and the thing, and make, well, there's a soldier. Well, I must dress the part. Clement is a really fun role. For someone who hasn't appeared that much in the play, it really looks like, don't worry, you're going to have lots to do in Act 5. It'll be fine.
That's when you really shine.
Yeah, and all these bits are people coming in with the various confusions, and they're slowly getting unpicked. I do love the way Stephano immediately leaps on. Oh, Uncle! My dear Uncle, remember me from Act 1 when we last interacted? And I was a bit impertinent. Remember that? All these little bits. Thoughts in the room, because there's so much stuff going on here. Eric,
pick up off what you just said. I just like how Stephano goes, look, my uncle's here. Na.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? It's very childish. Alan,
just wondering whether the company that first played this was actually made up of people who either had been or wanted to be clowns. There's an awful lot of clowning and cosplay going on, isn't there?
Well, I think we got to assume that it's Lord Chamberlain's men. But the company is perfectly capable of playing a variety of roles. If everybody's going to get a chance in this kind of comedy, and it is an ensemble comedy in that sense. Everybody gets to be doing something like that. Yeah, Lynn.
The scanty evidence that we have about this play is that it wasn't written for anyone. It was written on spec, and and Jonson was shopping it around, and the Lord Chamberlain's men happened to be persuaded to perform it. So, as far as we know, it wasn't written with a particular company in mind.
But maybe it got rewritten with that company in mind later on.
Yeah, there is always a lot of writing with Jonson.
So that might be something that we'll be able to dig into later. That'd be cool. Other thoughts about all this potential? I mean, how far do we push Clement? Elizabeth?
I think Clement is starting to edge his way past Cobb for my favourite character in the play. I thought that the last scene we just did was hilarious. I think that an early modern crowd would be laughing, holding their sides. I particularly love the whole "get me my sword, get me my armor." It's just if it's a soldier. I really loved "I'll cut off your head and I'll cut off your ears." I feel like that's from something from the time. So I feel like it's an allusion from another play.
Because he's picking up on the must that was being used in the dialogue, and he's spoofing his own profession. I mean, it almost feels like it's sort of Tommy Cooper with a box of hats that Clement just goes, oh, who's coming on now? Oh, well, I'll wear the right hat for that one. Helen.
Yes, I thought it was interesting. I mean, Clement did comment on it, but Bobadilla is very, very subdued. He talks at some length, but I protest being a man of no sort, given to this filthy humour of quarrelling. So he's very unsoldier-like, that his honour's been despoiled, he's been disarmed, he's been beaten in the open streets. And Matheo keeps excusing it by saying he's bound over to keep the peace. But it doesn't work. And Clement picks up on this. Is this a soldier? Take my armour off quickly, in case it upsets him.
He might swoon.
Yeah. Bobadilla's the braggart soldier. He's like, does nothing but quarrel in the first couple scenes where we see him, and now he's like, no, I'm a peaceful guy. Such a faker.
Yeah. Yes, we other thoughts in the room. Welcome, Briony, to who's made it. Yes, our third Lorenzo senior and servant will hopefully is online in a moment, able to join the discourse. Any other thoughts before we find out what Musco has to say? Because Musco looks like he's going to spill the beans on all the stuff. I don't know if he is. It could all be lies. I don't know what he's going to say. We'll see how it's all going to go. So if we're called to step in, we have some dog action. Yay!
Big pupper.
So
the right page now as well.
Excellent. Clement has filled his bowl of wine and is got the popcorn out. Is ready to hear what Musco has to say.
Indeed, this is it will make a man speak freely. But to the point, know then that I, Musco, being somewhat more trusted of my master than reason required, and know his intent to Florence, did assume the habit of a poor soldier in wants, and minding by some means to intercept his journey in the midway, twixt the grange and the city, I encountered him, where begging of him in the most accomplished and true garb, as they term it, contrary to all expectation, he reclaimed me from the bad course of life, entertained me into his service, employed me in his business, possessed me with his secrets, which I no sooner had received, but seeking my young master and finding him at this gentleman's house, I revealed all most amply. This done, by the device of Senior Prospero and him together, I returned, as the Regevant did to the ark, to my old master again, told him he should find his son in what manner he knows, at one Cobb's house, where indeed he never meant to come. Now my master, he to maintain the jest, went thither, and left me with your worship's clerk, who, by being of a most fine supple disposition, as most of your clerks are, proffers me the wine, which I had the grace to accept very easily. And to the tavern we went. There, after much ceremony, I made him drunk in kindness, stripped him to his shirt, and leaving him in that cool vein, departed, frolic, courtier-like, having obtained a suit, which suit fitting me exceedingly well, I put on, and usurping your man's phrase and action, carried a message to Signor Thorello in your name, which message were merely devised but to procure his absence, while Signor Prospero might make a conveyance of Hesperida to my master.
Stay! Fill me the bowl again. Here, to a pity of his life would not cherish such a spirit. I drink to thee. Fill him with wine. Why, now do you perceive the trick of it?
I perceive very well. We were all abused.
Well, what remedy?
Where is Lorenzo and Prospero? Canst thou tell?
Aye, sir, they are at supper at the Mermaid, where I left your man.
Sirrah, go warn them hither presently, before me. And if the hour of your fellow's resurrection be come, bring him too. But forward, when thou hast been at Thorello's.
And exit
Marry,
the
sir.
servant.
Marry, sir, coming along the street, these two gentlemen meet me, and very strongly supposing me to be your worship's scribe, entreated me to procure them a warrant for the arrest of Signor Giuliano. I promised them upon some pair of silk stockings or a jewel or so to do it, and to get a varlet of the city to serve it, which varlet I appointed should meet them upon the Rialto at such an hour. They no sooner gone, but I, in a mere hope of more gain by Signor Giuliano, went to one of Satan's old Ingles, a broker, and thereupon your man's livery for a varlet suit, which here, with myself, I offer unto your worship's consideration.
Well, give me thy hand. Pro, superi ingenium magnum quis noscit homorum, ilias eternum si latuisset opus. I admire thee, I honour thee, and if thy master or any man here be angry with thee, I shall suspect his wit while I know him for it. Do you hear, Signor Thorello, Signor Lorenzo, and the rest of my good friends? I pray you let me have peace when they come. I have sent for the two gallants and Hesperida. God's marry, I must have you, friends. How now? What noise is there?
Enter servant, then Peto.
Sir, it is Peto come home.
Peto? Bring him hither, bring him hither. What? How now? Signor Drunkard, in arms against me, ha? Your reason for this?
I beseech your worship to pardon me.
Well, sirrah, tell him I do pardon him.
Truly, sir, I did happen into bad company by chance, and they cast me in asleep and stripped me of all my clothes.
Tut, this is not to the purpose touching your armour. What might your armour signify?
Marry, sir, it hung in the room where they stripped me, and I borrowed it of one of the drawers now in the evening to come home in, because I was loath to come through the street in my shirt.
Enter Lorenzo Jr., Prospero, Hesperida.
Well, disarm him, but it's no matter. Let him stand by. Who be these? Oh, young gallants, welcome, welcome. And you, lady, nay, never scatter such amazed looks amongst us. Qui nil potest, sperare desperet nihil.
Faith, Master Doctor, that's even I. My hopes are small, and my despair shall be as little. Brother, sister, brother, what? Cloudy? And will no sunshine on these looks appear? Well, since there is such a tempest forward, I'll be the porpoise, I'll dance. Wench, be of good cheer, thou hast the cloak for the rain yet. Where is he? It's hard now. How now? The picture of the prodigal? Go to. I'll have the calf dressed for you at my charges.
Well, son Lorenzo, this day's work of yours hath much deceived my hopes, troubled my peace, and stretched my patience further than became the spirit of duty.
Nay, God's pity, Signor Lorenzo. You shall urge it no more. Come, since you are here, I'll have the disposing of all. But first, Signor Giuliano, at my request, take your cloak again.
Well, sir, I am content.
Stay. Now let me see, O Signor Snowliver. I had almost forgotten him and your genius there. What? Doth he suffer for a good conscience too? Doth he bear his cross with patience?
Nay, they have scarce one cross between them both to bear.
Why, dost thou know him? What is he? What is he?
Marry, search his pocket, sir, and he'll show you he is an author, sir.
Dic mihi musa virum. Are you an author, sir? Give me leave a little. Come on, sir. I'll make verses with you now in honour of the gods and the goddesses for what you dare extempore, And now I begin. Mount thee, my phlegon muse, and testify how Saturn, sitting in an ebon cloud, disrobed his podex, white as ivory, and through the welkin thundered all aloud. There's for you, sir.
Oh, he writes not in that height of style.
No. We'll come a step or two lower then. From Kaditupa and the banks of the Nile, where only breeds your monstrous crocodile, now are we purpose for to fetch our style.
Oh, too far-fetched for him still, Master Doctor.
Aye, say you so. Let's entreat a sight of his vein then.
Senior, Master Doctor desires to see a sight of your vein. Nay, you must not deny him.
What? All this verse? Body of me? He carries a whole realm, a commonwealth of paper in his hose. Let's see some of his subjects. Unto the boundless ocean of thy beauty runs this poor river, charged with streams of zeal, returning thee the tribute of my duty, which here my youth, my plaints, my love reveal. Good. Is this your own invention?
No, sir. I translated that out of a book called Delia.
Oh, but I would see some of your own.
Sir, here's the beginning of a sonnet I made to my mistress.
That. Who? To Madonna Hesperida. Is she your mistress?
It pleaseth him to call her so, sir.
In summertime, when Phoebus' golden rays. You translated this too, did you not?
No, this is invention. He found it in a ballad.
Faith, sir, I had most of the conceit of it out of a ballad indeed.
Conceit! Fetch me a couple of torches, Cyril. I may see the conceit. Quickly, it's very dark.
Call you this poetry? Poetry, nay then, call blasphemy religion, call devils angels and sin piety. Let all things be preposterously transchanged.
Why, how now, son? What are you startled now? Hath the Brise picked you, huh? Go to, you see how abjectly your poetry is ranked in general opinion.
Opinion? Oh God, let gross opinion sink and be damned as deep as Barathrum. If it may stand with your most wished content, I can refel opinion and approve the state of poetry, such as it is, blessed, eternal, and most true divine. Indeed, if you will look on poesy as she appear in many poor and lame, patched up in remnants and old worn rags, half starved for want of her peculiar food, sacred invention, then I must confirm both your conceit and censure of her merit, but view her in her glorious ornaments, attired in majesty of art, set high in spirit, with precious taste of sweet philosophy, and which is most crowned with rich traditions of a soul that hates to have her dignity profaned with any relish of an earthly thought. And then, oh then, how proud a presence does she bear! Then is she like herself, fit to be seen of none but grave and consecrated eyes. Nor is it any blemish to her fame, with such lean, ignorant, and blasted wits, such brainless gulls, should utter her stolen wares with such applause in our vulgar ears, or that their slubbered lines have current pass from the fat judgments of the multitude. But that this barren and infected age should set no difference twixt these empty spirits and a true poet, than which reverend name nothing more can adorn humanity.
And we're going to pause there. There's some torches entering that were called for earlier, but I think we need to unpick some of this because it's a little confusing. We've got a little caught into stuff which isn't quite clear without some more elucidating stage directions. So is it Matheo that they're searching and producing all this literature from? because that sort of isn't cleared up until quite late in the exchange. And sort of going, who are they actually addressing for quite a while? And Prospero is there to comment on these things. Whereas just looking on the page, it looks like they're talking directly to Prospero, and it's quite confusing. I don't know if I'm right about any of that. I'll go to Lynn, then Alan.
Yeah, I think Matheo is the one who thinks of himself as a poet. So yeah, when he meets Stephano, it's like, oh, you can use my loft to write your poetry anytime, because we poets have to stick together. So yeah, Mateo's the one who styles himself an author, a poet.
And that's where we're getting into sort of literary criticism from the time, which I think for modern ears is going to lose us without some real heavy work. The general gist of it, I love the way Clement's sort of going from let's begin on this level, let's work our way down. Let's maybe simpler verse, maybe something a bit easier for you. Maybe hang on, I'll just get some Rupert Bear. Let's see if that's your level. No, okay, let's go lower. Alan.
Yeah, I mean, Matheo was accused of poetry earlier and of plagiarism. And it did strike me that the last of the quotations almost felt like Spike Milligan. Yeah,
there is a sense of it slightly devolving as it goes, and I like that. This one's you translated. No, this is invention, as in from a ballad. It's like. Rachael, I think, was waving. Were you? No. Yes?
No. Yeah. I mean, this. I was just going to say the same thing. It's Matheo who wrote this. Also, that is. I think. I don't know. I have to go back and reread it. Maybe I have something to say. Maybe I don't.
But it seems to be a physical activity of this whole thing of pulling more and more papers out of Matheo. It does feel like there's business here again, and we're constantly inferring business from this text, because Clement has all this stuff of the commonwealth of paper in his hose, and it's like where are we going to find the next poem from? Well, I don't want to delve that too far down the back of there. Eric.
It's very much like that gag. Well, I guess you see it in cartoons and also in Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know which one where they elected Elizabeth Swann, the pirate queen. Anyway, irrelevant, but yeah, where they kind of start pulling stuff out of the pockets and it just keeps going. You're just like, how much stuff is in these pockets? Like, it starts with small things like a spoon or a hammer, and then it gets bigger and bigger, and you're like, okay, is this? It's basically that gag, but like with poetry and sort of, yeah.
And the scene is paying for slightly more complex, self-involved gag play here with straightforward sight gags of the entrance of Peto, who we can assume is basically just sauntering on sideways wearing assorted bits of the suit of armor, because that's all he had in the room. I mean that's and so that's just a straightforward sight gag of just going, yeah, hi, this is all I could find. I'm covering myself with a bit of suit of armor. I like sight gags. I like cheap gags. They're good. Helen, then Rachael.
Yes, I looked at the Clement verse, the Phlegon Muse, and you've got Saturn sitting on a black cloud, lowering his trousers to reveal a white backside. It's all dressed up in fancy language, but that's what he's saying.
Rachael, then Eric.
Yeah, I mean, all his poetry, like that he's what do you call it? What do they call it when you copy, when you're like cheating? You're not cheating on a test, but you're just plagiarizing. Yes. He does a lot of plagiarism, and then I guess the style of his poetry, that rhyme scheme isn't necessarily big brain like Nile, crocodile style. And I think that this is a lot of, I don't know, whatever, but also like Lorenzo Jr. Did he speak in a lot of verse before? Because all of a sudden it seems like he breaks out into talking about it, into this not prose style when talking about poetry, which is, I think, a little interesting. I think this is all a big poetry joke, this section. Not just a jab at critics, but at all these different verse poetry styles.
Yeah, and just generally mocking, and also just the fact that there are a lot of people on stage now, even though not a lot of people are talking. I mean, I think we've got to keep that in mind, that there is a stage picture here. So, Lorenzo Jr. enters and doesn't say anything for quite a long time. His father goes, "Right, son, I've had enough of you." But he doesn't actually get a return on that because there's so much stuff going on. And also just the way Prospero just has managed to get into this sort of continuing his audio commentary throughout the text. It's when his Clement says, is she your mistress, and he pleases to call her so. It's this constant pricking of the people on stage. Clement is the crucible through which truth will be revealed. Eric.
I have 2 points to make. First, I like that Musco at the beginning of this, where we paused before, goes, indeed, will make a man speak freely. And basically he's referring to the wine, which will make basically Clement like him, and also sort of anyone get drunk. If you get him drunk enough, will sort of supposedly admit that, everything that's happened to him and that kind of thing. Also, I was going to say that the whole... Prospero's first few lines, I have no idea what that was about, aside from like, that my hopes are small, my despair shall be as little, and then I don't know what the rest of it was about.
Yeah, the Helen maybe has.
Yeah, I can't find the thing, but I noted that he was actually just replying to the oh yes, I've got it, the tag. Who cannot hope, cannot despair, is, I think, a very rough translation.
So there's a bit of Latin that is said, and Prospero is responding to it. He's riffing on it.
In fact, just repeating it in English.
Yeah.
As my hopes are small, and my despair shall be as little.
I'd love the point about the Musco taking a massive drink. I mean, that how because that again could be a stage moment that goes on. How big is this bowl of wine, and how full is it? Because he says fill his bowl. So maybe Musco just has to take a really, really big drink before he starts explaining the plot. And it's reasonably condensed. But I see that whole thing with Musco as again, it's like the close of Clue when the butler's going through all the various different things, and then they went through here, and then X was killed, and then this happened, and that it should be wholly acted out with whoever's on stage available to be the different things, and it has potential. Any other thoughts of this complex scene with lots of people on? It's the kind of scene where I'd possibly in rehearsals I might start with this scene and work backwards, because it's the most physically complicated one for people. We've only had one person speaking at the same time as themselves, so well done, Lynn, for covering that reasonably well. It's just I'm amazed that more of that hasn't happened. Alan.
Yeah, and I had one line, then there was a gap, and then I was on as another character.
Yeah, it was just it was that's a near miss. I don't count those. Okay, so we left this Lorenzo Jr. talking about poetry. What was Lorenzo's point actually? He was making here about poetry, because I think it's quite important to just.
Yes, I know. I mean, he's got a lot to answer for. He's been running around, making trouble just for the heck of it, and his father's mad at him, and he's gotten married without his father's consent, and then he goes off on this disquisition on poetry. Like, what? I have no idea.
It felt like it was just simply a way of trying to get him back in the room, like to refocus on the character rather than that he really has any logical reason for doing that. Yeah, Rachael, and then Elizabeth.
I feel like sometimes there's things that are, character stuff, and then other times there's like, it feels like a mouthpiece for the playwright.
Yeah.
Some sort of mouthpiece for Jonson to rail on other people's poetry, like how bad some of it is that he's read, and then also just like I think at the end, like it's not just a shot at critics, like there is a shot at critics there, but just also at like audiences. Like he's going after everybody who has he has a lot to say, I think, about writing and what he thinks that the state of writing currently is in terms of poetry.
We're saying the playwright's mask is slipping slightly here. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think Rachael just hit the nail on the head. I was thinking I think it might be Philip Sidney who wrote A Defense of Poesy, and I was feeling like a bit too much of Jonson's defense has come through Lorenzo. About a true poet, nothing more can adorn humanity. I thought that's a bit extreme. That he thinks poetry is crowned with the rich traditions of a soul. Blah 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 blah. So I felt that it was almost over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But what part of this play is not over the top? Okay, let's conclude the text. We don't actually have that much left to go. I just wanted to flag up, thoughts on Lorenzo Jr., because that's where we left off. Lorenzo Jr. Went off on this poetical vein. The torches that were sent for earlier by Clement, for reasons that are similarly slightly obscure in my mind. Anyway, enter with torches some people, presumably, and Clement now gets to follow on from Lorenzo's thoughts.
Aye, Lorenzo, but election is now governed altogether by the influence of humour, which, instead of those holy flames that should direct and light the soul to eternity, hurls forth nothing but smoke and congested vapours that stifle her up and bereave her of all sight and motion. But she must have a store of hellebore, given her to purge these gross obstructions. Oh, that's well said. Give me thy torch. Come, lay this stuff together. So, give fire. There, see how our poet's glory shines brighter and brighter. Still it increaseth. Oh, now it's at the highest, and now it declines as fast. You may see, gallants, sic transit gloria mundi. Well, now, my two senior outsides, stand forth and lend me your large ears. To a sentence. First, you, signor, shall this night to the cage, and so shall you, sir, from thence tomorrow morning. You, signor, shall be carried to the market cross, and be there bound, and so shall you, sir, in a large motley coat, with a rod at your girdle, and you in an old suit of sackcloth, and the ashes of your papers, save the ashes, sirrah, shall mourn all day, and at night, both together sing some ballad of repentance, very piteously, which you shall make to the tune of Who lists to lead and a soldier's life. Sirrah, billman, embrace you this torch, and light the gentlemen to their lodgings, and because we tender their safety, you shall watch them tonight. You are provided for the purpose. Away, and look to your charge with an open eye, sirrah.
Well, I am armed in soul against the worst of fortune.
Faith, so should I be, and I had slept on it.
I'm armed too, but I'm not like to sleep on it.
Oh, how this pleaseth me.
And exuent, some people.
Now, Signor Thorello, Giuliano, Prospero, Bianca.
Not me, sir.
Yes, and you, sir. I had lost a sheep, and he had not bleated. I must have you all friends. But first a word with you, young gallant, and you, lady.
Well, brother Prospero, by this good light that shines here, I am loath to kindle fresh coals. But, and you had come in my walk within these 2 days, I had given you that which you should not have clawed off again in haste by Jesu. I had done it. I am the arrantest rogue that ever breathed else. But now, beshrew my heart if I bear you any malice in the earth.
Faith, but I did it to hold up a jest and help my sister to a husband. But brother Thorello and sister, you have a spice of the jealousy, as both of you, in your hose, I mean. Come, you do not dwell upon your anger so much. Let's all be smooth foreheaded once again.
He plays upon my forehead, brother Giuliano. I pray you, tell me one thing. I shall ask you. Is my forehead anything rougher than it was wont to be?
Rougher. Your forehead is smooth enough. Man. Sorry.
Why should he then say be smooth foreheaded, unless he jested at the smoothness of it? And that may be, for horn is very smooth. Oh, so are my brows, by Jesus, smooth as horn.
Brother, had he no haunt thither in good faith?
No, upon my soul.
Nay then, sweetheart. Now, nay, I pray thee, be not angry, good faith. I'll never suspect thee any more. Nay, kiss me, sweet Mas.
Tell me, Bianca, do not you play the woman with me?
What's that, sweetheart?
Dissemble.
Dissemble?
Nay, do not turn away, but say, if faith, was it not a match appointed twixt this old gentleman and you?
A match?
Nay, if it were not, I do not care. Oh, do not weep, I pray thee, sweet Bianca. Nay, so now, by Jesu, I am not jealous, but resolved. I have the faithfulest wife in Italy. For this I find, where jealousy is fed, horns in the mind are worse than in the head. See what a drove of horns fly into the air, winged with my cleansed and my credulous breath. Watch them, suspicious eyes. Watch where they fall. See, on heads that think they have none at all. Oh, what a plenteous world of this will come, when air rains horns. All men be sure of some.
Why, that's well. Come then, what say you? Are all agreed? Doth none stand out?
None but this gentleman, to whom in my own person I owe all duty and affection, but most seriously entreat pardon for whatsoever hath passed in these occurrences that might be contrary to his most desired content.
Faith, sir, it is a virtue that pursues any save rude and uncomposed spirits, to make a fair construction, and indeed not to stand off when such respective means invite a general content in all.
Well then, I conjure you all here to put off all discontentment. First you, Signor Lorenzo, your cares, you and you, your jealousy, you, your anger, and you, your wit, sir. And for a peace offering, here's one willing to be sacrificed upon this altar. Say, do you approve my motion?
We do, I'll be a mouth for all.
Why, then I wish them all joy. And now, to make our evening happiness more full, this night you shall be all my guests, where we'll enjoy the very spirit of mirth, and carouse to the health of this heroic spirit, whom to honour the more I do invest in my own robes, desiring you too, Giuliano and Prospero, to be his supporters. The train to follow, myself will lead, ushered by my page here with this honourable verse. Claudite jam rivos, pueri sat prata biberant.
And the play ends. There's a number of sort of little details, editorial details that need to be filled in, and I'm sure have been filled in other editions, as to precisely who gets what sentence and precisely who is being addressed at certain points. Most of them seem relatively straightforward and figure-outable, but it would be awfully helpful to know precisely who gets what. It's turning everything around into a relatively happy conclusion at the end. But actually, I was saying, I'm sort of complaining earlier, going on, and everybody turns up at the end. Actually, not quite, really. There's an awful lot of people not on stage, or if they are on stage, they're not saying anything.
Well, yeah.
And so it doesn't feel, from the dialogue at least, that you sort of have everybody's plots resolved, because, Cobb and Tib, that thing was vaguely resolved, or was it? And or was it just sort of being left hanging? So, and I don't know if the Hesperida sort of matchmaking thing has been really satisfyingly settled. So yeah, thoughts in the room. I'll go to Rachael, then Alan.
I thought the last bit here, this is just my feeling. I don't know if it's necessarily correct, but that Hesperida and Lorenzo Jr. are still on stage. And Clement, Prospero, Lorenzo Sr. and Clement are the people with the last lines. And I think there is a silent engagement that has just happened, and they're going off to celebrate. So there's a sort of chastisement for the foolery that they've gotten up to, but at the same time, there's a, do we approve this? And Prospero says, I'll be mouth for all. Yes, we do. And you have some sort of like scene setting where, I don't know, Hesperida and Lorenzo Jr. have their hands clasped or something, by the altar, because that's what sacrificed upon this altar, like, I don't know, old ball and chain joke. They're getting hitched.
Alan, then Lynn.
Yeah, I get the impression from that very final speech that Lorenzo Jr. and Hesperida have been sentenced to matrimony. And the final Latin tag, I may be completely wrong with the top of the head translation, but it sounds, and the boys are going to get drunk.
Well, not quite. I think it's what you say at the end of the evening. It's we're drunk enough. Now's the time to pull the plug. We've really had enough. Is more the sense of it. I think it's Virgil.
Lynn.
Yeah, just to agree with other interpretations. When Clement says, I'll have you all friends, but first a word with you, young gallant, and you, lady. He's talking, I'm pretty sure, to Junior and Hesperida, and he's like, come on, you guys, okay? Do you really want to get married? So he's talking aside to them, and Giuliano and his little brother Prospero kind of make it up. Like, well, you've been quite the wag, but I guess I'm going to forgive you. So, and something that's a little weird about this structurally is that, if there's kind of a new comedy hidden in here somewhere where the point is that the young couple gets married in the end, it's a little disappointing that Hesperida has nothing to say in this entire scene. She's basically the ingenue, and she has nothing. There's no lines. She's just there like, I got a boyfriend. So that's a little disappointing.
Yeah, Hesperida really hasn't said almost anything in the entire play. I mean, she had a few nice exchanges in one scene yesterday, I think. Entered in a scene earlier in the play, didn't say anything there either. It does seem that Jonson is deliberately not really writing large female roles in this. If it was a spec script, maybe there's a logic to that of actually not knowing which company might have it or where the talent lies. In relation to the boy actors, but I don't know. It is very. I mean, it's called Every Man in His Humour, and it is very male. This whole text, and it doesn't seem that the whole potential matchmaking thing has been so in passing. There hasn't been very much of it. It's almost like, well, that's how comedy is supposed to end, so we'll just tokenly put it in there. Whereas actually it's all about fools and doing silly things and stuff. And you can compare it with, say, later on, a few years down the line, when Marston is writing things about fools. You know, he doesn't bother with a matrimony plot. He just ends the thing in bitterness and despair. Just leaves everyone with this really awful taste in the mouth. Which Jonson is at least giving us, you know, the semblance of a happy ending. And it feels like this is where you need to really, the production needs to work really hard to make this feel quite satisfying, because it doesn't quite land as an ending. Actually, there's been some great business in this final scene, but trying to sum up all of these parts, but using very few interlocutors, very few people are talking in a scene with a lot of people in, and that's maybe also to make the scene not too complicated to rehearse. In a play that has quite a lot of business, I'm just wondering that. But then when you get actors on stage, maybe it all resolves itself perfectly well. It may just be because we're reading it that it's difficult in that sense. Alan again.
Yeah, there's an interesting one when you look at this conclusion. Effectively, Tib and Cobb get no resolution to the plot. The middle orders, the sort of the young reprobates, get sort of passing mention and then sent off stage, and you're left with the key group at the end, which are the better off of the characters who do achieve some sort of resolution. So you could actually look at it almost as being a three-class system, and the justice is only there effectively for the knobs.
Because it's like also with the peripheral characters like Stephano, who basically just stands behind Uncle, and then never says a word again, or almost never says a word again. It's like these characters just sort of zoom back. You know, they just sort of drift towards the back of the queue. But maybe with the entrance of the torches, maybe it's just because it's interesting. Clement does all this stuff about being able to, the brightness of the flames, and look, everything looks so bright and wonderful and shiny, and now no, it's not anymore. Oh, it's like everything's gone dark. And again, addressing the question of humours, the influence of humours, and hurling forth nothing but smoke and congested vapours and this stuff, before passing his judgment on Bobadilla and Matheo and etc. Again, which is not wholly clear in our reading at this stage as to who gets what. Helen.
I found Thorello's cure or whatever singularly unconvincing.
Let's all be smooth-foreheaded once again.
All this, I've given up suspicion. I'm throwing all my horns away. Let's throw them in the air and let them fall on other people's foreheads. I don't know. I mean, I can't see a reason for his change. He's very upset.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose...
But I can't see the point at which he gets this sudden change of heart.
Well, I think everybody has just told him that, look, it's all been you've just been, we've been prompting this at you, so none of this was real. It in the dialogue that we've had with Prospero and people before that, so it sort of makes sense in terms of watching it, even if it may not psychologically make perfect sense. I don't know if we should apply too many layers of psychology.
Yes, I mean, she starts crying, and suddenly, that's all she needed to do.
Yeah,
weep a few tears, and he's.
But he has been told by that this Prospero did address the jealousy in a speech earlier, so he has been given an intellectual thing as well.
Fair enough. But
I'm not saying it's enough in real world, but in just in the sense of last 2 minutes of the play. Wrap it up.
Yes, I mean, normally in the plays with a big jealous guy in it, and we've had such a lot of them, they can tell him till they're blue in the face that he's wrong, and he never believes.
Yeah, but he then usually kills them anyway, because they're usually tragedies.
That's a tragedy.
Lynn, then Rachael.
Yeah, I mean, I think Helen was onto it when she said she cries, and he's like, oh, and I think if you needed to motivate that moment psychologically, that's how you as an actor or as actors would work on that. Is that when he actually speaks to his wife face to face, and she's like, what? No, yeah, I sweetheart, kiss me. That he's never actually confronted her about it. He's always talked to other people. He's never really asked her. So I heard these rumors. What about this? And when he actually confronts her face to face, he looks at her and he goes, "No, I was wrong this whole time." That's how you motivate that. If you need to be more psychological about it, but the motivation is really thin. But so your actors have to work really hard.
Rachael.
I think I agree with Lynn. I also think that I mean, for this entire play, he's been afraid of being he was afraid of being laughed at for being a jealous man, because jealous men are funny. And in the end, he gives it up, and we have Jonson use that verse form again, and it's such a funny poem. Like, if you took that out of the context of this play in verse, that's just so funny the way it's written. And I was laughing at that just because it's such it's like a serious poetic form has been turned into something almost like a limerick, like a dirty limerick. And he's definitely getting laughed at, but it's like, as a character, he's given up being afraid of being a fool and just being like, okay, let me come clean. I was jealous and I was doing all these things, behind your back. But you know what, if people are going to call me a cuckold, then I'll be called a cuckold or something. So I think that, like Lynn was saying, it's partially the relationship, and then it's also the character, and it's sort of a form of release in that he's just given up. He's frustrated and he's given up. We've got a conclusion. We have Act 5 has done a lot of things. I don't know if the anticipation of what's going to happen in Act 5 has quite been resolved by what Act 5 managed to do with it. But I can see it being, sortable, outable. There's the material is there in performance, and I think we can turn that corner. But it does feel like there's an awful lot of you're really, really leaning into that curve. Right, we've finished relatively early, so we've got plenty of time to have a natter and final thoughts as we contemplate the play overall as a whole, now that we've got a sense of its shape, actually. And I'm feeling more confident today now, actually, about trimming it back and finding a route through it, actually. We were talking about how intricate it was and how important certain things are. But actually, it's while there's an awful lot that is functioning like clockwork, there's actually quite a lot that doesn't fully resolve itself later with certain characters, and therefore maybe you don't need to spend that much time on them earlier on, and you just need to sketch them in
in a lighter shade. It's like I really liked what was going on with Stephano early in the play, but Stephano just disappears about halfway through and occasionally does a little funny thing. So yeah, this is drifting into final thoughts. I'll go to Lynn.
Maybe I'll just do all my various thoughts all together. And
I think we've got time to dance around, so you can come back.
So yeah, you were saying that you're starting to get some ideas about trimming. I'll just commit blasphemy and say, I think you can conflate Matheo and Stephano. That the foolish cousin who wants to be a gentleman and the guy who has pretensions of being a poet. I bet you could find a way of cutting one and keeping the other and just kind of mushing those two together. That's something that I think maybe we could look at in terms of streamlining.
Yeah, I know. I like that. And I don't think there's any reason why we can't make radical adjustments if we feel the need. Ultimately, we may come back to this many times, and that's always the aim: is that we are returning to texts and doing them in different ways. When you've got this much material, there is no right answer. I should point out to this exercise. It's just whether it then works. That's the ultimate test. Unfortunately, you can never predict that. Alan.
I think you've mentioned that this was the first version of this play that appeared, and that Jonson did a fairly heavy rewrite of it a little while later. I'm not sure what gap of time there was between the two. My feeling would be that, yes, there's bits in here that work quite nicely, but it will be interesting to see what the author himself had done with it after some experience of seeing it in performance, whether that resolves any of the issues that we've been finding less than 100% satisfactory, and using that as the start point for any potential revival.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a good point to say, look, Ben Jonson was here before us. And it's going to be really interesting to compare, what the energy of the two texts, what is gained, what is lost between different versions, and there are textual variations as well between the different versions of those texts in themselves. It is quite a complicated series of potentialities that we can apply with this play.
How much later was the Jonson revision?
Off the top of my head, I don't know, but Dan may.
So this one was printed in 1600, the first quarto. Although it's been noted that it was performed in 1598 by Lord Chamberlain's men. The second version that we have in existence is in the works in his folio text in 1616.
Right, so it could have been up to a decade or almost 2 decades later, when he'd possibly learned a bit more about stagecraft and sorted out some of the wrinkles.
But let's say we will burn that bridge when we get to it. But it's absolutely absolutely. We've got material here to play with. Elizabeth, you missed a session, but you've dived back in again. How was it for you? Are you missing Cobb?
I missed us having the video of the session that day. I was like, I have to wait for the premiere. Well, that comes in a few days' time. But I really liked this play. I felt a strong sense of it being really almost lush. We've had plays which have been set in like courts of kings. I was thinking of like The Insatiable Countess. And this had a very strong sense of like, I envisioned bright costumes, really definitive characters, maybe some mask stuff going on. I really enjoyed Act 1, kind of blew me away. And I think Act 5 has a sort of anticlimactic sense to it. It wasn't quite the payoff promised in Act 1, but I love the change in tone between the acts. I love that each act offers something new. And I really like the range of characters. I think what Lynn said about conflating some of them is a very good idea. I think at the end of the text, the reason why not all of them speak might be because they were doubled. So some of them aren't actually there because they were played by someone else. But overall, every man in his humor was very enjoyable for me. I enjoyed it a lot.
Excellent. Helen, any final thoughts? Muted at present. I think you may have just muted yourself rather than the reverse.
Sorry about that. I needed at one stage to blow my nose and then forgot to unmute. I'm slightly worried by Clement, who could be very much a pain rather than the guiding spirit of Act 5. And I think the same applies to a number of them. You've got to find something in each one that the audience can relate to, because I don't think there's any very much point in a modern performance in trying to find your way into showing what the author originally intended, because it's no longer tremendously relevant. So I think you've really got to put some work into finding an equivalent for Clement, who I see as quite a problem. I think we're not paying quite enough attention to Musco. I'm not sure, but I would imagine that he is the center of the play. I mean, he is, perhaps we discussed him less because he is easiest. We know what he's there for. We know what he's doing. We've seen this servant who's wiser than everybody else and is the only person who actually knows what's going on. We've seen this before, so we haven't needed to point out that he is an important, yeah, I think he may very well be the centre of the play.
Well, it's a play that defies having a centre. You know, it really is ensemble, because Musco, when he's on, is really central, but he's also not on quite a lot, and disappears for quite a long period of time. I mean, it's almost like it's a shame that he doesn't disguise himself as a Clement at the end, and the whole thing is, you know, it feels like the trick has been missed there by introducing a Deus ex judge, to machina our way through the thing. Yeah, I get your point on that, as the importance of Musco and his games. And yeah, what do you do with who is?
But that would be a wonderful idea if Musco did. I mean, it would mean losing a big Musco speech, but nevertheless,
losing the oblong speech is not the end of the world.
Musco as a judge would be
hilarious.
Yes.
I mean, the audience doesn't need
especially if nobody else recognizes him, except the audience.
And of course, the audience doesn't need Musco's speech. I mean, Musco's speech is for the characters on stage. You know, it's a good speech to do a job that you really don't want to actually do. Because it's, you know, everybody already knows all this. Lynn again.
Yeah, actually, even Prospero and Lorenzo Jr. could recognize Musco disguised as the judge and just not say anything, because they're invested in everybody being friends and having the marriage between Junior and Hespera to go forward, and having everybody reconciled and being forgiven for their hijinks. So a couple of people could even know what's going on. So that's a fascinating possibility. Okay, and I have another random neural firing about how do you produce this? Another thing that's a little problematic about this is that it's so laddish. You know, it's like the frat boy play. So a gimmick that I have been thinking about for the past couple of days is, what if we flipped the genders on the casting? All the men's parts are played by female actors, and then the few women's parts are played by male actors. That might that might be really interesting if you have the right talent. Ideally, it would give a sort of window into how socially constructed those gender roles are. And it would afford acting opportunities for women, which are just still, the truth is, more limited. So that's just, I don't know, that's just an idea for, I mean, it's kind of gimmicky, but I don't know, it might work.
Oh, I definitely in any production, open out the gender rolling of all the parts and work through that, because there's no way I'm just doing this number of men on stage for this. I don't think the play needs it either, per se. I think there's a lot of give and take on that that we definitely could play with. Rachael, any final thoughts?
I think a lot of it's been said. I agree a lot with Elizabeth and with Lynn. This is really lush. You could merge some of the characters together. He has a really interesting and different structure from other playwrights that that I've read with you guys so far. I really like that I was here for this one first with him, and the humorism, because it reminds me so much of modern acting and the way that modern acting works with animal work, or that you need to know your time of day for doing things like that. He seems to really have actors in mind while writing, and maybe he hones that more over time, but I think just from this, he's got a good idea already.
Dan, you've obviously only been here for this session. I don't know if you have any final thoughts you want to throw in.
Yeah, it's very difficult, obviously, for me to pick apart a plot that, even if I was here for all 5 sessions, I think I'd have
It was only 4. It was only 4.
It might
it's
feel
not
like
that long.
5.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, with Jonson plays, I find that you just have to find the rhythm and the tone. You don't have to worry. I think one needs to worry less about I guess the plot being so coherent, as much as getting the humor across and knowing whose side is who's on, rather than every intricate detail of it, because his plots are very difficult to follow, I find. Doubling is something that, because of the numerous characters in this, I can see can be difficult unless really done well, executed well. I would say that probably conflating characters, as has been suggested, is a really good idea when staging these plays. Jonson is somebody who's known to tinker with his text, as has been said many times in this discussion. The folio text is funny that way, insofar as it's as you have seen in this text, there's been numerous entrances, and very confusing as to when people exit or to whom they're speaking. For some reason, Jonson in the folio later on does a lot of mass entrances, meaning that everyone enters at the same time, and then does clear up some things with it, but he's going more towards a literary type of text, it seems to me, for somebody to read rather than to stage. Whereas in this play, somehow he looks like he's trying to have the audience or the reading public understand exactly how it was staged, which I always think is a tricky thing when we have an author who's trying to direct everything here. And given that, because he's so stage direction heavy, I would say ignore as much as possible and just try to make it coherent, because the author is not the director, and he might envision it one way, and we're certainly not obliged to follow everything he says there. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, we've spoken before. I said earlier about getting those characters right, making them funny. and a lot follows from there, and there's a lot of time needs to be spent on that. But whilst I think I said on the first session about this is a slice of life. It's happening. It's a day. It's a very we've had a lot of references to time again. They're very important to clear up what time things happened, as to what was going on here. So that coherent world is really important as well. So long as it's consistent and it has energy, I think you can carry it a lot of it forward. Eric, I think, any final thoughts?
There's probably going. Everyone said such sophisticated things, and I'm just going to say I like the characters and the sort of way it's built. Obviously, as we've said, the ending is kind of sort of difficult to make work, but like I guess that depends on the company and the sort of budget as well, because we've discussed before that we like plays with sort of 4 main characters where you can just like double other people if necessary. Where you can do it with like 4 actors or something. I don't know what other things to say.
It's fine. We don't have to have things to say. That is perfectly fine. I don't know if Briony is able to pop in for any final thoughts. We've had some tech and availability issues. I just throw that out there as I rattle around any final thoughts of my own. I mean, this is. I say Dan made that good point. The difference between this and the later version is something we will explore later down the line. This one is the one that feels the most theatrical. I think that's reasonable to say. I think, as Dan's already intimated, and that's one of the reasons I find it quite an exciting text, because I feel like it has the sniff of grease paint about it, with all its imperfections. And the ending, I think it works, but it doesn't quite live up to the promise of what we were discussing earlier. And maybe that's a problem, just simply this format of stopping and starting a lot, which actually Ben Jonson responds to quite well, because there's lots to dig into. But I think in performance, some of the things that we're flagging up here probably are fine. It's probably fine. Lynn?
Oh, Rob, didn't you say something earlier in the discussion about you would almost, if you were producing this, you would almost want to rehearse the final scene first in the rehearsal process, and then go back and start blocking and working. And I have always wanted to someone to direct a play like that, because when you're memorizing music, for instance, a really good technique for that is to cut it into like movements and memorize the last bit first, and then the next to last and the last, so that you know the piece better and better as you move through it. And I think that would be a really good technique with this play. It's like, once you've decided your edit and you've got the final scene, rehearse that first. So it's kind of in the back of the actors' heads. This is what we're moving towards. I think that might help it feel more satisfying and more inevitable if this somehow on an unconscious level, your actors know that's what we're going towards. That's just an experiment I've always wanted to see conducted.
Yeah, it's a tricky technique to do with plays. I mean, because sometimes you can really mess up your own blocking, and you can get very confused. And it can be it's a bit of a thing to get into when you first start doing it. But the advantage is you're always moving towards something you know, and it's quite nice that And usually at the end of a run, you're quite tired. So if you're going into a bit, you don't need to panic about whether you know your lines or not. It's generally quite nice, but it's the most complicated in the sense that there are most number of people on stage. It's not necessarily the most complicated of scenes, as some of the earlier scenes with lots of fools doing silly things could be incredibly complicated, even though there's about half the number of cast on stage. But yeah, Eric,
I think it was you who mentioned it, or like sort of. Yeah, at the beginning of the scene, or like halfway through, or whenever we paused for thoughts before this, like it does strike me as a bit of a sort of visual tableau where you've got like sort of maybe Dr. Clement sitting in the middle, and people are sort of bringing him things and sort of, or sort of as a just king kind of thing, that kind of energy. I don't know. And then everyone is gathered around him. I don't know. Maybe that's just, yeah.
It does give us a sort of visual image, that we can centre around. Yeah.
Yeah, stage pictures are important.
It's always nice to build a production around that kind of thing. Helen.
One of the things that gets lost is Bobadilla's ending. I mean, he's effectively, it isn't described that way, but effectively he's put in a pillory. Well, he's tied to the market cross with a paper on his head, which is a similar effect. And but I mean, at the time, I got the impression that it was just in order to clear the stage a bit so that we could see the other actors, which is it's a bit sad for a character who has had an arc. I mean, he's had a bit of a journey. He is an interesting character in his way. His relationship with Tib never gets totally resolved. All the money he owes to Cobb never gets resolved.
They don't get a fight. They should have a fight at the end or something. You know, something should happen with the both of them at the end.
Well, I feel both the Cobb Bobadilla situation is one that really I was looking for a resolution for.
And of course, with Clement, you can never really be sure that the judgment he's just passed is real either. I mean, you know, it might, again, when you're saying get them off the stage, there's a judgment. You know, how much weight does that judgment actually have?
Right, because he does this sort of fake thing the first time we see him, where Cobb comes and says, "This guy beat me up just because I criticized tobacco." "You criticized tobacco? Off with your head." And then he's like, "No, I'm just kidding. Get this guy the warrant he asked for." So yeah, just kidding is a move that Clement has pulled before. So yeah.
You almost feel that at the curtain call, like that everyone's having a knees up and drinks party as at the end of the play, and then the three are brought back on and go, "No, it was all a joke," and you just do it that way or something. I don't feel that this play has actually any sustained darkness to it. I mean, there's occasional moments of being a bit mean, and in theory, Cobb beats his wife, and how violent that actually is in a production that is a comedy. It's it would be weird if we sent them off to proper punishment at the end for not a lot.
Yes, I think you have to recognize that people beating their wives and servants was considered extraordinarily humorous.
Yes, it's the basis of all Tudor interludes, basically, at some point. Anyway, any other thoughts from the room? I think we've wound down. And before I close the session, all that remains is thank everyone for this journey. I hope that your humours are all bubbling away happily under the surface. Thanks to all these wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Bye.
Call you this poetry.